Hello there. In this section, we are going to talk about attacks against the authentication. So basically, attacks against login. Apart from protecting your session ID, another important thing is protecting the user's credentials, such as the username and password. The best way to do that is encrypting the communication between the client and the server. This can be done by the Secure Socket Layer, or SSL, or its successor, the Transport Layer Security, or TLS. When I say SSL, I usually mean both. This is a really interesting technology. What happens is that SSL is not really a separate communications protocol. It's rather a layer what you can use on various communications protocol to provide encryption and decryption to these protocols. So, for instance, when we say HTTPS, it means that the communication is still done with the HTTP protocol, but there is a SSL layer on the top which makes sure that all the communication is encrypted and decrypted. You can imagine this as a tunnel. When you connect to an HTTPS website, first you're going to build an SSL tunnel and then send all the HTTP communications through this tunnel. To establish this tunnel, first a so-called SSL handshake has to be done. So let's see how that looks like. So we have here our client. In our case, that's the browser. And we have here the server, SSL server, which is the web server. When you open the website and it's on HTTPS, then first the browser will send a client hello request, which contains all cryptographic informations such as which cipher suits the client supports, and also cryptographic data which will be used later in the key exchange. Then the second step is that the server sends a server hello request, which contains the cipher suit which was chosen by the server and the server certificate so that the browser can check whether this certificate is valid or not. And if the server wants to validate the client, then he can also ask for a certificate with a client certificate request. After that, the browser will check the server certificate and the cryptographic parameters and start with the next request, the client key exchange. The goal is to create a secure key which they can use later on to encrypt the traffic. What happens is that the handshake is done using asymmetric encryptions like RSA, but during the communication, symmetric encryption will be used. The reason is that asymmetric encryption is really slow compared to symmetric, so it will affect the performance of the website if asymmetric would be used all the time. So they only use asymmetric to securely do a key exchange, and then they use this key later on in the symmetric encryption. They both calculate the key based on the exchanged cryptographic material, and then the client sends a client finished request, and the server replies with a server finished. These requests are already encrypted with the established secret key, with that indicating that both of them know the secret key. And when the server sends the finished request, basically with that the handshake is over and they can start communicating through the SSL tunnel. So basically from here on, the HTTP communication can be started. All right, so let's see this in practice. Let's go to your Kali. What you want to do, we're going to open Firefox. The Voice of the Emperor application supports HTTPS, so we will work with that. We are not going to use burp at this time because burp only intercepts the HTTP communication and we want to see the whole network stack. To do that, we are going to use Wireshark. You can find Wireshark at the sniffing and spoofing, and here Wireshark. So Wireshark is a well-known network monitoring tool, and what it does, it can listen on any interfaces and record the network packets sent through that interface. So first we need to set it up. We're going to use the ETH0 interface, because that's where the communication goes to the web server. But we don't want to intercept all the traffic which is going through, because there could be too much noise. So we will say that we only want to intercept traffic going to the web server's IP address. So basically to this host. And then let's say start. Your virtualizing software might ask for permission. I will give permission. And so Wireshark is listening. You could see here on ETH0 and with this filter. So now we have to load our website. So let's go to the voice of the emperor. I will just load the web root. But I will also make sure that it uses HTTPS. So let's open the page while Wireshark is listening. So first of all, you might get this warning message, which tells you that there is some problem with the certificate. So if you click on advanced, then it will tell you that the issuer is unknown. Now it's because I am the issuer, so I generated the certificate authority for this certificate as well, which is unknown for the browser. So you can just say add exception and then confirm security exception. But basically, whenever you get this warning message for legitimate applications, so for instance, if you're browsing Gmail and from one day to another, you will get this warning message, that means that somebody is messing with the Gmail certificate. So it's probably a fake service or a fake certificate, or there is something fishy going on. Basically, if you go to preferences and then advanced and certificates and view certificates, then you see here all these trusted certificate authorities which the browser works with. So if you want to run your own website, then you better get your certificate signed by any of these certificate authorities so that people don't get the warning message we just got. When we loaded this website, it was recorded by Wireshark, so let's check it out. So here we can already see some interesting things. For instance, it says that it's a TLS 1.2, and this is the client hello message. There's the server hello. We can try to say follow TCP stream. It doesn't bring us anything useful. You can see here some data from the certificate, but otherwise nothing interesting. But if you keep looking here, you can open because it's a TLS packet and Wireshark recognizes it, there's a secure sockets layer part here. And there is all the information you should have in a client hello message. All the mathematical attributes which is needed to build up the SSL channel, etc. You can also check out the server hello message. Here's, for instance, the cipher suit, which is chosen by the application. And there is key exchange. So I recommend you to check out all these packets and see how all the necessary parts of the SSL handshake are transferred in these packets. And of course, if you scroll down, there is lots of data here. Send. It's basically all the data which is transferred for the website, but if you check it, it already says that it's encrypted, because that was the whole reason to do the SSL handshake, so that we have an encrypted channel where we can transfer data. So in Wireshark, you cannot see that, because Wireshark only sees the packets and the data in the packets are already encrypted. But Wireshark is a good tool to understand how the SSL handshake is built. You can also see that the SSL handshake is repeated at some point. It's probably because there is a different TCP channel open for some different data which the website loads. Then, of course, you have to make another SSL handshake. And if you go back to the browser, then you probably already know that if you click here, then it will tell you that it's a secure connection, but only because we accepted the certificate of the server. And then you can get some information about the certificate which was provided. But now to get a better look at the certificates, I will show you that on the server. So we are going to log on to the target machine. Yes. So let's go to etc Apache and SSL. So this is where the Apache Web Server stores the keys for the server, or the certificate and the private key. So let's look into them. So if we just print out the Apache CRT, it's called CRT, but it's actually just a text file, and it contains a base 64 encoded data because it uses the X509 format. It's a well-known certificate format, and we can make it readable with OpenSSL. So we can say OpenSSL X509 minus in, and then the certificate file name, and minus no out minus text. So this prints the contents of the certificate file. So this is the certificate of the public certificate of the web server. You can see all important data. Here is the issuer, what we have already seen. And basically you can see here that it's a self-signed certificate. So it was signed by the same certificate. That's the easiest way to create a certificate, but of course that it's not really secure. And at the end, there is the public part of the RSA key. So here we can see this uses the RSA encryption, and this is the public part. So these are the mathematical attributes which are needed for RSA, the modulus and the exponent. And then here is the signature. As I said, it's a self-signed certificate. So, but this is the signature which is used to validate the authenticity of a certificate. And then there was another file, which was the Apache key. That's also a text file, and it's a private key file. We already found out that it's RSA, so we can just say RSA, and then instead of CRT we just say key, and then it's going to print the contents of this key file. So this is the private key. It contains only the mathematical components which are needed for the RSA. So this is pure mathematics. If you're interested in that, I really recommend you to Google it up, check it out, how RSA works, how this private public key works. Actually, you can really calculate on paper all how the encryption should work. So it's an interesting challenge. I did it once at the university. It was enough for me once in a lifetime. And the private key is called private key because this is really the file which you have to keep safe. But when I say safe, it means that certificate authorities who are signing all these other certificates, they kind of keep their private keys like 15 stories underground in their super secure safe. So it really has to be kept secure. If you're making yourself a serious certificate, what you're really using for confidential data, then the private key is what you will want to keep somewhere safe, stored in a secure location. So far we've seen how the SSL handshake works and how the certificates and the keys look like. There's one more thing I wanted to show you, and that's an application called SSL scan. So that what we are doing most of the time is that there are quite a few well-known vulnerabilities in various versions of SSL and TLS. So it's always worth to check whether the target server runs a secure configuration of these protocols or not. As I said, there are various vulnerabilities, so it will be pretty time consuming to check by hand whether the configuration is secure or not. So that's why I use the application called SSL Scan. It gives you quite a bunch of configuration possibilities, but what we really want is basically the IP address. And then start. So let's scroll back at the beginning to see what were the results. So it tests against some well-known vulnerabilities like the renegotiation and Heartbleed. They are pretty famous, so I don't really want to talk about it. And then here it lists all the supported ciphers, which is offered by the server. And basically it colors you those which have something problematic in it. So these are probably because RC4 is a not too good stream cipher. It's not necessarily bad for in SSL, but my opinion is that we shouldn't encourage customers to use bad encryption algorithms, even if in that specific case it's not necessarily insecure. So I usually tell the customers not to use RC4. Then as we scroll down, then we get to the place where the version is already not so secure. So for instance, you could see here that SSL version 3 is already marked as red because that's an insecure version of SSL, so there is a vulnerability in it, and that's why it shouldn't be used. And there at the end there is a few information about the certificate of the server. That's what we've just seen. So you could see here the who is the server and who was the issuer, and then the validity of the certificate. So SSL scan is a really good tool to get a quick impression about the used cipher suits and generally the SSL configuration of the server. And you can put this in a finding if you find something problematic like the versions or some famous vulnerability or something like that, then create a finding about it. So it's not easy to configure a secure SSL server. So your customers are definitely going to need your help. As a homework, you can check out this SSL cheat sheet from OWASP. It's pretty good. So look it through and then you will get a general understanding about what's good and what's bad in SSL. So I know that SSL is a huge topic. I could basically make a whole course only about SSL because it contains all the cryptography part, and then there is a whole infrastructure for it, the PKI, etc. But I think we talked through the essentials, what you would need when you're actually doing an assessment. But if you have questions, then don't afraid to Google or to comment to this lecture or send me some kind of email or something. Otherwise, I will see you in the next lecture. Take care.